Berlin will simply cease to exist. 5 words, delivered by Russia's foreign minister at the United Nations, have sent shockwaves through an entire continent. This was not a private threat whispered behind closed doors. It was a public warning, clear and chilling, broadcast to the world. For the first time since the end of the Cold War, a Russian official has threatened Germany with utter destruction, raising the specter of catastrophe in the heart of Europe. What triggered such a dramatic escalation? Germany's leadership has declared its ambition to reclaim its title as Europe's foremost military power. Billions of euros are being poured into tanks, aircraft, and new bases, as Berlin openly admits its goal is to become the continent's #1 military machine. For a nation that once swore never again, this sudden surge in militarism is as shocking as it is dangerous. But the crisis extends far beyond words. In recent weeks, mysterious drone attacks have paralyzed major airports in Denmark and Poland. The question on everyone's mind: who is behind these provocations? Russian agents? Western intelligence services? Or are unseen actors deliberately fanning the flames to provoke confrontation? All of this raises a terrifying possibility. Are we witnessing the first moves in a new European conflict, one that could engulf millions and shatter the peace we take for granted? If these signals are ignored, Europe may sleepwalk into disaster, risking not just lives, but its very future. To grasp just how dangerous this moment is, we need to unravel what led to Russia's explosive warning and why Germany's ambitions have reignited the specter of war. Let's pull back the curtain on the forces pushing Europe toward the brink. Germany's chancellor shakes Europe with a declaration. This is a new era. The country is rebuilding its military, rewriting its constitution, and pledging to spend more on defense than France and Britain combined. What once sounded impossible has become official government policy. Just a few years ago, Germany's national motto was "Never Again," a solemn vow to avoid the militarism that helped ignite 2 world wars. Now, Berlin is rebranding as Europe's military engine. The transformation has stunned allies and adversaries alike. Russia's foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, calls it historical amnesia. From the stage of the United Nations, he accused Germany's leaders of forgetting the horrors their military once unleashed across the continent. His words echoed pointed warnings. If Berlin marches east again, there may be nothing left of Berlin. Back in Germany, the paradox is palpable. Politicians still speak of peace and reconciliation, even as they push for the largest arms buildup in generations. Their new defense budget, now enshrined in constitutional amendments, will soon surpass the combined military spending of France and Britain. These moves have split public opinion. Some see them as a necessary response to Russian aggression. Others worry Germany risks repeating its darkest mistakes. The stakes for Europe are immense. Ignoring the lessons of history could cost the continent its fragile peace, its prosperity, and its moral credibility. But Germany and Russia are not alone on this volatile chessboard. Behind the headlines, mysterious incidents and shadowy players suggest a deeper game is unfolding. Who truly benefits when European infrastructure comes under attack by untraceable drones? And why do the accusations so conveniently point eastward, toward Russia? In recent months, Denmark and Poland have witnessed a surge of mysterious drone incidents. The finger is instantly pointed at Moscow, but the evidence is murky, and some details hint at a more complicated, perhaps manipulated story. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has gone further, openly suggesting that Western intelligence agencies, especially the British, may be orchestrating these provocations. The goal? To fuel anti-Russian hysteria and push Europe closer to confrontation. This is not an isolated episode. We see a repeating pattern. The media and political leaders amplify the so-called Russian threat, shaping public opinion and preparing societies for conflict. Each new incident, whether verified or not, becomes another brick in the wall of suspicion. Meanwhile, NATO's expansion eastward is not just a talking point for Moscow, it is a genuine source of anxiety. Russia recalls promises made, then broken, that the alliance would not move, not 1 inch, closer to its borders. Yet NATO has advanced hundreds of kilometers, placing its forces right at Russia's doorstep. As these shadowy provocations multiply, the risk grows. A single false flag operation or manipulated escalation could trigger a spiral no one can control, destroying trust, wrecking economies, and costing countless lives. The stakes are nothing less than peace in Europe and the credibility of the entire international system. But if the cycle of suspicion and militarization keeps spinning, where does it all lead? Let's confront the possible futures. Will Europe and Russia step back from the brink, or is a point of no return already in sight? Is Europe on a one-way track to war, or can cooler heads prevail before the fuse is lit? Across the continent, the unthinkable is now being discussed out loud. Governments in Berlin, Paris, and Warsaw are openly preparing their people for the possibility of mobilization and war. Military planners draft scenarios that, not long ago, would have belonged to history books, not breaking news. At the same time, these leaders urge the world to fight climate change and invest in a greener future. But while they promise wind turbines and solar panels, their parliaments quietly push through massive defense budgets and plans for troop deployments. It is a contradiction that is hard to ignore. Talk of saving the planet, even as they prepare for its possible destruction. Moscow is not standing by. Russian officials have issued blunt warnings that any move seen as a direct threat will meet a severe response. Behind closed doors, the Russian military has accelerated planning for real-world scenarios, moving from rhetoric to concrete preparations. The stakes could not be higher. A full-scale war would not only devastate Europe, it could trigger political chaos, topple governments, and shatter the entire international order. Millions of lives and livelihoods hang in the balance, under the shadow of decisions being made in secret rooms. And yet, there is a fragile thread of hope. After the tense Alaska summit, diplomats from Moscow and Washington are still talking, trying, however cautiously, to keep open channels and prevent disaster. These conversations may be the last barrier holding back the tide. So, is there a way out? Or are these warnings and initiatives just falling on deaf ears? Next, we untangle the forces behind the escalating crisis and ask, who really benefits if Europe plunges into chaos? In a world teetering on the edge, what can ordinary people and their leaders actually do to pull us back from disaster? First, it is crucial to see through the fog of rhetoric and examine real actions. Russian officials, like Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, have pointed to recent Russian proposals for arms limitation. These are not just words, but concrete attempts at de-escalation. Yet they rarely receive the attention they deserve in the West. Moscow has repeatedly called for legally binding security guarantees. These requests, which could form the basis for peace, have largely been ignored or dismissed by Western governments. Instead of dialogue, we often see more military buildup and hardline statements, fueling a vicious cycle. There is a stark paradox at play. Those most loudly claiming to defend peace and democracy are often the very forces escalating the risk of confrontation. The same governments urging vigilance against threats abroad may be quietly raising the stakes at home, sometimes without real scrutiny or public debate. So, what is the lesson for citizens? Do not accept posturing and vague promises at face value. Demand transparency from your leaders, real explanations, not just slogans. Insist on accountability for decisions that put millions of lives at risk. And above all, call for genuine dialogue, not just public grandstanding or blame games. Because failing to act or question official narratives is not a neutral choice. It risks sacrificing not just peace and prosperity, but the very principles of democratic oversight. In moments like this, silence and apathy can be as dangerous as any missile or drone. The final question remains: will Europe's leaders and its people continue to sleepwalk toward disaster, or will they finally reclaim their voice and shape their own future? When every headline pushes for conflict, who will insist on a future worth living? At this crossroads, the danger is not simply in military maneuvers or angry speeches, but in how easily societies can be swept toward disaster by fear and propaganda. The greatest loss would be the willful surrender of peace for the illusion of security. A bargain history shows we rarely survive unscathed. If we accept the logic that louder threats and bigger arsenals make us safer, we risk becoming numb to the real cost. Neighbors turning into enemies, economies faltering, and the constant shadow of war over our lives. Our leaders, on all sides, must be held to account. They need to answer not just for their words, but for the consequences they set in motion. Do not let history repeat itself because of apathy or manufactured outrage. Demand real answers, not just slogans or scapegoats. True security can only be built on dialogue, memory, and the courage to resist the easy path of escalation. Ultimately, the future of Europe, and indeed the world, depends on ordinary people refusing to be bystanders. It is up to each of us to see past the noise, to insist on restraint, and to keep the hope of peace alive.